One thing I like to do a lot of, and which helps me stay organized, is to take lots of notes, create to-do lists, and plan out my day for what I'm doing. I have a day planner which I live by. I always make notes about what I'm supposed to do every day, and I can always plan in advance for what I need to do for those days, because in 10 weeks from now I won't have a clue or won't remember. So I do a lot of taking notes, and I keep track of things, and I'll have ideas for projects, but of course at the moment that that idea comes to me, I won't have time to stitch it or do anything with it. So I'll jot it down, remembering that later on I may be able to make this into a class or make some kind of project with it. So I have lots of notebooks everywhere. The first thing I want to show you is I keep a lot of notes, templates, handouts that I've taught in notebooks. This one I'm going to show you here, this big fat notebook, is my current margin for error quilt that I'm teaching. And I have everything in here that I need. I have all my handouts that I've created, taught, and printed off. I have templates in the back, plus little fabric pieces that I keep everything in this notebook for this one quilt. So that's an idea for larger projects that you're doing. Anything like that, things where you have things that you've printed off, templates, embroidery designs, anything like that, keep it all in a notebook. You can put it in sheet protectors, label the end of it, you'll have all your information here. That way if you wanted to do it again several years down the road, everything is right here and it's not scattered all over your sewing room. So that's one thing I found really, really helpful, is to keep everything in a notebook like that. The other thing that I do is I keep clipboards around everywhere. This is my permanent home for my clipboards, but they usually don't stay here. I actually have a couple of empty ones right here, and these just have plain 8.5 by 11 ruled notebook paper on them. They're empty. I can make notes. I usually have one sitting by my cutting board, or when I'm creating a project, I always have this paper handy. It has a hard backing, so I can carry it wherever and make notes. And I can also take this paper and later staple it into a notebook or tape it somewhere. And I can also trash it if it ends up being trashed later on. But these are so valuable to have. They get scattered around my sewing room all over the place. And this actually has a bunch of notes on it. I think I was creating some quilt blocks here. And so I have some notes of what I was doing. You can see all my scribbling, all my scribbles. And I have some other projects, some curtains I was making, and some other things that I have notes. Later on, after I'm finished with a couple pages, I'll put them to the back. And every month or so I'll go through them and decide if it's something that needs to be trashed or something that I want to file for later and keep that I may want to create later. This one was actually a laundry bag I made for somebody. I wrote down the measurements and stuff. If they ever wanted me to make one again, I would have exactly what I did. So the other thing that I do is I keep notebooks and journals. And my journals are not really fancily decorated. You could do all kinds of things. But this is just a plain little notebook that I keep. And this one is actually for when I'm traveling or going to quilt market or quilt shows or something. I will keep a little smaller notebook than an 8.5 by 11 so it will fit in with my stuff. And I made all kinds of notes in here. The classes I was going to, I would, instead of having lots of pieces of paper I would carry around, I had just this notebook and I just jotted down notes. When I was going through the quilt show, quilt exhibit, I would jot down the name of the quilt and something that was interesting to me, a technique they used or something. Here I have a fabric idea of gluing the fabric to a bottom of a clear plate. And it creates a fun project, and you can coordinate something in your kitchen by gluing the fabric down to a clear plate. So I thought that was kind of a neat idea. I wrote it down. I'd actually forgotten about that. It's a good thing I read that. So the other thing I have here is I was sitting in one of the classes when I was in Houston last year, and this lady sitting next to me had this really cute tote bag, and it was really large, and the neat thing about it was made out of ultra suede and upholstery fabric, and it was in this soft aqua blue that was really, really pretty, and it had some beaded trim. And so I was sitting there listening to whatever the lecturer was talking about, and I made a little drawing of this tote bag and made some notes, and also thought of some ideas that I can incorporate some other kinds of fabrics into a tote bag and maybe even incorporate it into a class that I would teach later on. So I made some notes here, and right at that moment, obviously, I didn't have time to make it, couldn't, I was away from home. And also, when I got home, I knew I would never remember that little tote bag, but I have kind of a mental picture now, and I have a drawing to kind of go with it. A lot of times I have my camera and I take pictures. Sometimes in quilt shows, pictures are not allowed, so you have to be careful of that. But you can always have a notebook and a pen and kind of make little sketches. So this is the little bit smaller notebook that I take with me when I'm going to classes and other places. Then I have some more notebooks. This is a notebook that I have little tabs here. Sometimes I'll be thinking and come up with some ideas that I want to blog about or some ideas that I want to check up on the internet. And so I'll just make a little note of those and then cross those out when I've gotten through those ideas. That way when I have a few minutes of time in the evening or have a few minutes of time that I'm waiting to do something else, I can look at my notebook and say, oh, I could check that out real quick. And then I can cross that off my list and look at whatever I wanted to look at there. The other thing, I have my ideas planned out for this year. I have my classes planned, so I have all these little tabs here. I have my newsletters planned that I'm going to do for the next couple of months, along with my giveaways that I'm giving away on my blog. So I have all those things planned out here. One thing is, if you can plan out as much as you can and organize what you're going to do, you will get so much more accomplished because you won't have to be thinking about the last minute what you're going to do. You have it all scheduled out right here. So that's what I keep in that notebook. Then I keep journals with photos of the projects I have made and projects that I want to make in the future. And I'm going to show you a really, really old one, but this one is just a little theme folder notebook. And before I really got into quilting and machine embroidery, I made doll clothes. And so this is a little notebook, and all this has in it is just about 8 or 10 pages of the different kinds of doll clothes that I made. And I kind of described what they had. They had a little dress and train, and this one has Christmas. It's actually made with velvet, and it has Christmas tinsel around it for decoration. So it's really kind of fun to have pictures with your descriptions of things you've made, and you can go back years from now and see how you've improved, and even my handwriting has much improved since I was making doll clothes. So this is just something, this is actually really old, but it's something that you can keep, and it's really fun to look through later on and see how your sewing and quilting has improved. I do have a little bit more recent one that has photos in it. And that is this one right here, when I'm still taking film photos. And this is actually a really fancy notebook. It's just a college-ruled 8.5 by 11 notebook. But I can keep all kinds of things in it. This is a vacuum sweeper cover I made in November of 2004. You can see a picture here. And I have the pattern, Simplicity pattern that I used. And it was 4 foot tall. And that I used denim for the dress, and I used Christmas fabric for the apron. And I have some more pictures here. You can see a little closer up. She has a little hat on. So I take pictures, try to take pictures of the things that I'm creating. This is a little paper piece project. And I think back here a little further, I have my camp quilt that I made several years ago, summer of '05.